Miss Patti, thank you for giving me the opportunity to get to know you and to hear about the innovative things that you're doing with Bayou Jamb.
Well,
So
thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
awesome. So let's back up. So before we started rolling, you told me something I did not know. I tried to do my homework and I didn't even see that. But Bayou Jamb actually did not start underneath you. So give us a little bit of the history of it.
So, in 2006, I was actually employed by St. Francis Medical Center, and St. Francis acquired was known as St. Francis North Hospital,
Right.
North Monroe at the time, and they acquired that hospital. Upon acquiring it, there was actually a sports medicine team that was acquired with the purchase of the hospital. And that was not a space that St. Francis was really familiar with at the time. Glenwood had the market on that. Kurt Franum, who was very well known and very affluent in that space, kind of had the market on that, meaning that all of the sports medicine representatives actually that were in the schools were employed mainly by Glenwood Hospital at the time. My really background with St. Francis was in the sports marketing field, but I actually owned a company called Junior Fitness Academy. It was the first fitness center for children underneath the age of 18 in Louisiana.
Wow.
So I met with Dr. Terry King at the time, and that's how I made the connection with St. Francis to partner together to bring that fitness center underneath the umbrella of St. Francis. They asked me if I knew anything about sports medicine. I said, I don't. I don't know anything about it. But we actually started looking into it a little bit more and decided that, okay, I could work with them. We would need to find an event that would highlight our sports medicine team. What can we do to really bring them into the community and familiarize the St. Francis with that sports medicine team? And so we started talking about it. There was some conversation with the North Louisiana Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Clinic at the time, and there was some brainstorming that went on, and they decided to land on a football jamboree. And in the very beginning, the football jamboree was hosted as a community event, but it was also done to spotlight our sports medicine team, to put them in the community and let our community see what they could do. And so that's how it actually started. I was the director of the event from the beginning, from 2006 all the way through, even past my time at St. Francis. But Bayou Jamb was trademarked and owned underneath the umbrella of St. Francis Medical
So
Center.
when it started, the first jamboree that you guys had, how big was that event? How many teams, if you can remember back,
Yeah,
versus to kind of where you're at now with it?
yeah. In the beginning, we actually had 3 games. And so there were 6 teams that were participating in it. West Monroe, Neville. I actually am trying to think back. I think OCS participated. Trying to go through the ones that have been with us. Oak Grove. Those 4 have been with us definitely from the beginning. And then 2 more. I would need to look back, but I think Bastrop may have been one of them. But though it was just 3 games, and we thought that it was a massive undertaking because it was hosted at ULM. The volunteers all consisted of employees that came from St. Francis Medical Center and the North Louisiana Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Clinic, and we didn't know what we were doing. We had a sporting event that we were trying to pull together, and you had some physicians, you had physical therapists, you had nurses, you had your customer service that answered the phone. You had all different walks of life that were coming together, which made it a very unique experience, but a very challenging experience to host that type of undertaking. And I think we had approximately 12,000 that attended the first year.
Okay, that's a great
Yeah, it
turnout.
was a big turnout. It really
So did
was.
that exceed your expectations? Did you think that you guys would
Oh,
have that much of a turnout?
no, we didn't.
Even
Now,
though we're a football town, you didn't
right.
think?
No, we didn't. We were really unsure that first year. If you can remember if you back up to that first year, I'm not from this area, so I grew up in South Louisiana. I joke and call myself a transplant, but I've been here, for several years now, and I didn't understand the dynamics with us being the football town. I grew up in a small town, Walker,
Right.
Louisiana, and we liked football, but it was nothing like it is here. And I can remember hearing so much that first year why don't you get West Monroe to play Neville? And I thought, well, what is the big deal? Because they hadn't played each other in years.
Right.
And of course, at the time, I was the person that was literally going knock on every coach's door, asking them to participate. That in itself was a huge undertaking. And I don't think people understand that, I was going to ask everybody, will you play in our jamboree? And
And it's something they wasn't used to during the
yeah, and it was a
springtime.
no. It was an absolutely no. I mean, we're not going to play. And I could not Washita. I knew that it was Washita and Ruston. And so I knew that we had to make the connection somehow. And so my last knock on the door was actually to Coach Don Schaus.
Okay.
And he was the last one, and I walked in, and I said, look, this is what we're trying to do. And he never missed a beat. And he was like, absolutely, I'll do it. And I thought, wow, how easy was that? Everybody else told me no. And he said, go back to them now and tell them West Monroe's playing. They'll all play. And I can remember thinking at the time, gosh, this guy's kind of arrogant,
That rivalry.
Yeah.
It's big.
And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go. And sure enough, everybody jumped on board. And it was such a big deal that West Monroe and Neville were going to play. And I didn't know, at the time what I had done. I didn't know about making those connections, sitting Coach Don Schaus at the same table with Coach Mickey McCarty and saying, let's figure this out because this is what I keep getting asked. And the room's silent. I mean, it was quiet at the time. And I just didn't know. So it's kind of, one of those things that you don't know what you've got until you look back on a little bit later. And I wish so much that some of that would have been documented and recorded in a better fashion because it's such a great memory and experience for me, myself.
I think it definitely is a memorable experience for the people who participated because before that, I don't know of any other type of jamboree that was happening. This happened in springtime, right?
Right. We sat we came together in the springtime, but it was the jamboree actually happened. It was the first jamboree that was held, the first game of the year prior to football season.
Okay.
So it's always the week before. And we have a time frame. You can only play a jamboree through the LHSAA within a specific time frame. So we had to work within that time frame. So bringing just 6 schools together to all agree to come to a neutral location to play this event. They're all in contracts, so that was another challenge. You're contracted or underneath the contract to play with a specific team for that year.
Right.
Well, the way that those work is if you're at West Monroe at home this year and Neville is coming to you, that school gets the proceeds, their concessions, their gate ticket sales, all the things that come along with it, and then their expenses are taken out of that. Well, then the next year, it goes to this homeschool. Okay. So that's how they actually were funded and made their money. So the year that we came in, coordinating those schools to say, okay, we've got to figure this out. We've got to get enough money to make it fair for the team that was going to host. So we had to work through that. We had to work through who was going to work this. How were we going to actually go through and have people at the gates, ticket sales, ticket takers. We weren't online even at the time. I mean, everything was done through cash, proceeds, ticket taking, and selling.
Remind me what year this was again?
2006.
2006.
Yeah, so 2006 was our first year that we had to work through all of those. So it was a very large undertaking. And I guess, I've always had a knack for being able to look through events. And I guess, that's a gift that I have. I knew that if I could see the event happen and mentally go through that event and see some of the landmarks that were going to happen along the way, I would know how to work through that event because I had not hosted an event at that time. And I knew that I could do that, then we could make it all the way through. So I was able to do that, but that was a big undertaking at the time.
So how did that advance moving into the next year? Have you been consecutive every year having them? Did y'all have to skip some years?
We did. We skipped a few years, and I'm off on my years. I don't have them in front of me, but definitely probably around 2012. I think there was one year I departed from St. Francis, and upon my departure, at the time, our CFO was Ron Hogan, who I connected and worked hand in hand with through the Bayou Jamb. And he and I sat down and talked about it. And when I left, my departure was because I was going to ULM as their director of marketing. They had reached out to me and said, listen, you've done this very well with the Bayou Jamb. Why don't you come do it for us? And I thought, absolutely, this is exactly what I want to do. So upon my departure, Ron and I sat down and talked about it, and he said, "Do you want to continue to work on this even upon your departure?" And I said, "Yes," because everything was volunteer. All of the proceeds from this event go back to the schools. So it was not a moneymaker at all for the the orthopedic clinic or St. Francis Medical Center. And so I said yes. So I actually continued to work on the event through 2012. And I think it was in 2012 that the NCAA came in with some different rules that really prohibited high school athletes from being on a campus around within that time frame of football season. So when that happened, it was a big challenge for us. We could not play at ULM and follow the rules of it, without being outside of those rules of the
So do you
NCAA.
think those rules were kind of unfair for what you were trying to accomplish? I would think that that was probably the intent was from a recruiting
It
standpoint,
was.
but what you had brought to the table was completely different than that. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And since those rules have definitely changed, I think that the NCAA comes in and they do a lot of things to try to do things right. There are times that I feel like there are too many rules, that are put in place that are
sure,
counterproductive. But I think, and that was one of them at the time. So there was a pause in it. Did I think it was unfair? Yeah, definitely. I knew that what we were doing was not of the intention to really favor any type of recruitment, but I also knew that getting these students onto a college campus to enhance their experience for them, 90% of these high school players are not going to go on to play even at the
right.
collegiate level. So I knew that what we were doing, the intent was great, but I also knew that there was nothing that we could do about it at the time. And really, we did not want to try and navigate those waters and complicate things, because our intent was never to try and we did not want anybody to be ineligible, that sort of thing. So there was a pause that was in there, and throughout that pause, I actually started traveling doing consulting work. On a personal level, my territory was the United States. So throughout that pause, it made it a challenge for me to do any type of volunteer work. I was
Right.
traveling the entire United States. And then upon my return in 2016, I came back to Monroe West Monroe area and as general manager of the radio people. And whenever I came back, of course, the passion for this event was still there. I knew that the integrity of what we were trying to do was still there. And I thought, okay, how can we bring this back? And so I called.
So was it not happening when you
It
got
was
back?
not.
Okay. How long do you think it had
Four
been shut?
years.
4
4
years.
years. Yeah, I think it was 2012 to 2016. I think that was the time frame that we did not do it. Um, and so I came back, and it had just been, quiet. These teams were playing again back at their local high schools, and I spoke with Bob Holliday, which is the owner of the Radio People, and I said, "Look, we have the means to market this event. We have the ability to broadcast it and get it out there and get it going again. So if we can do that, if I can get the coaches and the schools to participate again, are you interested in giving this time, the radio time, the air time, and my time, as a volunteer to this event?" And he said, "Absolutely." It was always a great event in the community. So then again, I'm knocking on the door of every head coach. That relationship is the key to this entire event.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
So did you have to go back to the hospital and say, "Hey, will you guys
I
get
did.
on board?" And were because you're willing to head things up, were they eager to let it happen
Yeah,
again?
I did. At the time, still Ron Hogan was still the CFO at that time. And so I called my friend up and said, "This is what I want to do. Are y'all interested?" And he said, "Yes, if you can get it, we're interested in it. And we still want to supply that support." Now, St. Francis' mission at that time, they no longer had the sports medicine team. So really their mission had changed, and it was not something that they were all in. And what I mean by all in, volunteers, the time, their director of marketing, Sandra Nelly, spent an enormous amount of time doing really what I do now, making sure that everything as far as the event was executed. And so that was not part of the mission that they wanted, but they definitely wanted to be affiliated with it. So we got together and brainstormed and came up with a great partnership with them to allow me to direct the event, to continue as a volunteer, and have them as a primary title sponsor and use the trademark and keep the name. And that was important to me. You know, the Bayou Jamb had become a staple event in this community. We could have gone a totally different direction and created another name for the event, but I just felt like what we had built thus far needed to stay intact. And they felt the same way.
I mean, it's definitely got name recognition. When we connected to do this, I mean, I knew Bayou Jamb. I knew it was about football jamborees, but I just did not know all the workings of it. So
Yeah.
you guys from the get-go did a great job from a marketing standpoint, really embedding that into the community. So
Well,
it really stuck.
And I'll tell you, I've got to give all the credit to that to Sandra Nally at the time. I mean, I don't think people realize the amount of hours that it takes for the volunteers, for the team that surrounds us to execute and pull off this event. You know, when you host a sporting event, the people that host that event generally are professionals that do this for a living. And from the beginning until now, it has always been volunteers. And it, you know, I can't see it being any different in the future. That's
Sure.
really what makes the event so unique and makes it. I'm so passionate about it because I get to know new people.
Right.
I get to bring them into the fold and expose them to something that generally in their everyday life they're not exposed to.
Right. So let's talk about the planning of that. So we're talking right now when you're doing jamborees. Are we still on the weekends as you're doing it, still looking at about 6 teams, 3 games, or is it grown to be bigger than that?
So it's bigger now. We have 17. Well, we have 7 games, 14 teams.
Oh, wow.
2 days.
2
It's
days.
big.
So
Yeah.
talk to me about the planning process that has to go into it, and especially if you're using a lot of volunteers to execute. It tells me that you've got to have a plan, and everybody's got to be on board with that plan. Talk to me
Yes.
about kind of what it takes to put on an event that big.
So for the Bayou Jamb, we start in May, and we have a committee. We have committee chairs and co-chairs, which each committee is assigned a specific area of the event. And I'll give you some examples. It may be the kid zone, tickets, gates, VIP, media. So each one of those areas have a chair and a co-chair. And every year, that chair, it has the option to stay a chair or to rotate down to a co-chair or rotate down to a volunteer. We have some chairs that have been in place for 14, 15 years.
What a
It's
blessing.
unbelievable.
Yeah, what a blessing to
it's
have those
amazing.
seasoned people there to
yes,
come alongside of
yes.
you.
And
But you
then
know what?
there,
I sorry to interrupt you, but that's
no,
just a
please do.
testament to your leadership.
Well, I appreciate that.
If you've got that many people that year after year willing to give the time, and I know that we're a big sports driven community here, but at some point you got to, it stops. If you stop having fun, you're going to stop doing it.
That's
So
right.
to know you got that many people year after year, yeah,
It's
huge.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's a blessing for me. And it's also, it's one of those events when you start in May and you meet every week until August 25th or 26th, it's unbelievable that this group of individuals, I think we have a total of 14 committees, 2 leaders on each committee, and then the volunteers. Our volunteer base has now grown to 200. We were at 100, but
Wow.
now we're at 200.
200.
Yeah, 200 volunteers to execute this event, which is great. I mean, it is unbelievable. It's part of what makes Bayou Jamb so unique, to look out and to see these volunteers that are rotating off shifts. I mean, it's not even about just the 2 days that people see, but it's also about the planning process and the planning period. What keeps this event so fresh are the ideas of those people that come on board. I walked out of a meeting just now, and you know, somebody will say, well, let's add this or let's change this, and it'll be something that I haven't even thought of. So for me, what makes this event so fresh is those new ideas and the continuation of the volunteers that come on board that are so creative, that keep this event going and going.
What would you say is the incentive for a school or a coach to want their kids to participate in this? I think be safe to say no coach wants to see their team go out and get hurt,
Right.
especially their key people right before the season gets started. So, what motivates them to want to participate? And are there any incentives for them to participate?
So I think what the motivating factor is the experience, the Bayou Jamb experience. Right now, I can tell you that there's three adults that I know right now that I just spoke to in the past week that have played in the Bayou Jam as players. And they always tell me it's one of the highlights of my entire high school. Going into a college stadium around that many people, just getting off the bus. I mean, the experience that I think that we offer them, the coaches that continue to bring their teams that have stayed with us love that experience for the student athlete. All of the gate ticket sales, 100% of those ticket sales go back to the schools.
Okay.
Okay. So any ticket sale that is done prior to the event or at the event, made at the event, all of those sales go back to the schools. They get to keep those proceeds. Every year we total that number, and I think right now we're at around $575,000
Wow.
that we have given
Wait a
back
minute.
to the
So $575,000 back into our community in our local schools.
just ticket sales. Now that does not
Yeah, I'm
include
just tickets.
just tickets. That does not include the concessions. We give those proceeds back to the schools. So if a school decides that they want to participate and they want to work the concessions, okay, you get part of those proceeds. We don't keep those.
Wow.
So that is not including the concessions, which probably is going to be, I'm going to say over the period of time, no less than 250 to 300. That does not include the scholarship funds that we give out. So for every MVP player that we have and they are recognized on the field, you know, I think it's at $250 now that they get that goes back to those players. So that does not include
Who
those
chooses
proceeds.
the MVP?
Our
Okay.
media will select them just like in any traditional setting. We'll go to that, we'll go up to our media that has watched the game and say who is our MVP. They'll radio down to us and give us our number, and we go elect that person. So
Wow.
yeah.
You mentioned it at the very beginning the experience that these young people have that will probably, for the vast majority, will never have that college experience just because the competition is definitely increases.
Yeah.
But I can totally see how that's for some of these once in a lifetime opportunity that they will keep with them for years and years to come.
It really is. And our smaller, and I say this, our smaller schools, but just frankly, they are, our smaller schools that participate financially, it's extremely lucrative for them. Our larger 5A schools that participate, your West Monroes, your Nevilles, even your Sterlingtons, the reality is they can make more money if they stay at home. That is the reality of it. And just recently, Neville and Sterlington decided that they wanted to stay at home and play. And we are very supportive of any school that decides that they decide
Yeah.
that they want to play at home. We always have the ability to add new schools that want to fill in those gaps. And that's actually driven by the coaches that are currently participating. We cover all the expenses for the teams that come in and participate. So it is a show up, play ball, go home, take your money. That is the experience for them.
Wow.
Okay. But at the same time, because they are not having to split proceeds, those larger schools, they can make more money if they stay at home. But the ones that are still with us, that have continued to stay with us, it is about the experience for them. And we know that we have to continue to make that experience better every single year for the players, for our fans, so we can continue to bring these teams in and keep this event going.
Right. So you talked about every year, not that you have to outdo the next year, but with entertainment just in general, keeping people's attention is
Yes.
just harder and harder. You talked a little bit about the fan experience, but give me some of those outliers, that extra things that you guys kind of put into it. You'd mentioned like there's a kid zone earlier, and what are you guys trying to do that is just a little outside of what the sport is that they came to do?
So, when we decided to actually create a community event, we knew that we wanted to surround the event with other activities outside of football. We knew football is king in this area and we wanted to keep that, but we wanted to expand and say, okay, if I'm coming to watch football, what can we do surrounding this event that's going to bring a family and make them stay throughout the day?
Right.
So, when we started brainstorming on that, that's where our volunteers come in every single year to say, okay, what can we do next? I saw this at this event that I went to, and let's bring this, to our event. So when it first started, in order to do that, you can create all these ideas, but in 2006, I'll just be honest with you, the internet was not nearly as fluid as it is
Sure.
right now, right? So we decided that working at St. Francis, that we would actually attend a Chick-fil-A Bowl. So if you've ever been to the Chick-fil-A Bowl, one of our sponsors was Chick-fil-A at the time, a title sponsor, and we had the ability to experience the behind the scenes and all the events that surrounded the Chick-fil-A Bowl. We took that experience and those ideas and we duplicated it at the high school level. So for the Bayou Jamb from 2006 until now, that fan experience, that fan zone, the spirit pep rallies that take place, all the things around it were duplicated from going to a Chick-fil-A Bowl.
So
Yeah,
if I understand you correctly, you're trying to create an experience that the whole community can take part in
that's right.
and can not
Absolutely.
just go to one game, but if they wanted to go to all the games that you're having that day, they can.
They can.
But after they watch the game they came to watch, they can still experience so much more. So it's
That's right.
I hate to say carnival atmosphere, but I mean
No, that's correct.
it's
Yeah,
a great community event that we're trying to build here.
that's right. I mean, we wanted it to be you can go in and you can watch a game, and we know it gets hot. We know just sitting in the stands gets old after a long period of time. So
Sure.
our events are you come in, you watch that game, you decide that you want to go and let your kids play in that kid zone area. You want to cool off, you want to get a popsicle and ice cream, you can go and do those things. And then you can come back for the next game if that's
Right.
what you decide to do. So we bring in sponsors, we bring in vendors, which is a great opportunity for them as well. And so as we bring them in, they're able to highlight their business. They are able to, get in front of a mass crowd. That is one thing that I've always loved about this in that this is any sporting event. If you can expose your business to a mass crowd that is in a good mood all at one time, it is one of the best areas of opportunity to
I
sponsor and to advertise.
completely agree with
Yes,
that. So with Bayou Jam, the organization, giving concessions, giving ticket sales, gate sales, all back to the schools, you have to rely heavily on sponsors to be able to put this event on. Because I
we
mean,
do.
these events can't be cheap to be able
They're
to put on.
not. Yeah,
And I would have to say that it would be impossible without having community support with the sponsors.
that's correct.
So, kind of, what does that setup look like for sponsors? What are you looking for every year when you're trying to put the one on for this coming year? So,
Sure.
what is the pitch to the sponsor to try to say, "Hey, I want you to come and partner with us on this"?
So we actually have a formal sponsorship program that now that we've started in 2021, expanding into other events, which I'm sure that we'll talk about at some point, it's not just a one-stop football shop anymore. You can actually partner with Bayou Jam throughout the season. So into baseball, softball, basketball, cheer, and you can represent your business in each one of those areas of opportunity throughout the year. So the pitch for us is exactly what I just told you. Without the support of the community, these events absolutely would not happen at all. We wanted the platform to always be and to remain the same. We did not want to capitalize off of the football event that we had initially started as a community event. We wanted to keep that integrity and to be able to promote that. That's what made it successful in the beginning. But as we grew through the Bayou Jam after 2021 and made it into a business, we wanted to look for other areas of opportunity for growth. So that could have been through marketing, our merchandise. We actually expanded into the NIL space. So we wanted to look for other areas of opportunity to create that business, but keep the integrity of the sponsorships, utilizing those sponsorships and community to cover the cost for this actual event.
Sure. So let's talk about, you brought it up. it's not just football anymore. You guys have branched out into some other sports. So
Sure.
tell me about some of the things that you guys are doing with other sports.
So we are first year of this. We are actually branching out. We branched out into baseball this past year in we're 2022. Had to think through that a second. Now into 2023. So we expanded into baseball, which was a very successful event for us. We initially intended to host that at West Monroe High School, but was moved due to rain at the last minute to Ruston High School. So we had a great turnout and a very successful event. And the idea behind that was, what can we do in other sports besides football? I was asked that question numerous times. My background is sports marketing. I've worked with ULM, I've worked with Learfield, I've worked with many companies, and I thought, okay, I want to do this for myself. COVID hit and kind of shut down some things everywhere, and I decided to make that leap at that time in 2021 to expand. And so we started looking at those areas of opportunity, which were, we knew that baseball would be definitely one of the sports that we wanted to expand
Park on
to.
baseball for a minute, because I have a question about that. So I'm sure there's traveling football teams that are out there that make it happen, but it's not near as big in our community as travel ball.
Right.
I am just sitting down listening. I don't have any kids that are in travel ball, but listening to some of my friends who have their kids in travel ball, I'm like, are you serious?
No.
Y'all play that many games? You go this far out
Yes,
to
I
do it?
know, I know.
I grew up playing like rec ball. I mean, you'd
Yeah.
have that season and
That's
wasn't
right.
really any good at it, but still, as a kid, had
That's
fun.
right.
I have good
That's
memories
right.
about it. But with the baseball, with travel ball, travel softball, I mean, it's just like they crave the play
They
to make it
do.
happen.
They do. And we have not even branched out into that market yet. We would love to. We wanted to stay in our lane, as I call it, of the area of expertise that we know that we have, which are prep sports, high school. That's where we really said, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to stay here for now. We knew that the opportunity into the travel space was there, and we definitely want to go into that space, especially with baseball and softball. I don't think people realize the number of fans that will travel for softball. It is unbelievable. I mean, it
I've
is
heard that travel
absolutely
softball
unbelievable.
attendance is way higher than any of your travel
It is.
baseball.
It absolutely is. It really is. It's shocking. They are some of just the best fans. They're a lot of fun to be around. And so we really sat down and said, okay, how can we do this? How can we make this work within a specific time frame? We knew jamborees, which was our expertise, were going to be hard to do, especially for basketball, because that was going to be in the same time frame as football season. So we looked at moving those events around to where it was not just strictly a jamboree. We did host the jamboree for baseball. It was great. And then we had plans on how can we execute softball, adding basketball. What am I missing? Cheer, and trying to think, the sports awards. We had those areas that we knew that we wanted to be in the first year.
Okay, so
And golf.
all right, let's
event.
there's a little bit to unpack here. So we have all of these volunteers that are working on the football jamboree every year.
Yes.
Does that mean these same people are committed to this, or we have whole new committees that are working on this other?
It's a mixture. It really is a mixture. You have some that say, look, I'm in and I want to be here. I really enjoy this. And keep in mind that a lot of your larger organizations give credit for their volunteer
Sure.
hours. So the ones that are committed, that like to continue to stay, this is their avenue to volunteer. They enjoy doing it. They can come in for a weekend. They can log 2 to 4 hours. They can get credit through their organizations. We are legitimately certified to give those credits to them. And so it's a great experience for them as well. Now, what we have found, because we just branched out into baseball this year, is you have an entirely new group of individuals that like to participate in baseball. And we want to give them that opportunity.
Sure.
So it has been good on both fronts. I have definitely had a supportive volunteer staff that has said, look, I'm in, we're here, call on us. And then I've also had new volunteers that have said, sign me up, I want to be part of it. And, this does cycle. You'll have some volunteers that come in, and as their kid graduates, they're in a different part of their life and they don't want to continue to volunteer, which is great. And then you'll have some that cycle in for a couple of years and they're like, you know what, I need a break. It's hot, it's
Right.
August, and we understand that too. But I somehow will tell you that I can tell everybody this. Knock on wood, volunteers never seem to be an issue for us. And I think it's because of the transparency of where the money goes. I've always been very open and transparent about that. I think that is a lot of the success, is that I have volunteered my time from 2006 to 2021. And the dollars and the money that are made off of those ticket sales and gates going back to the schools, and the
Mm-hmm.
sponsorships that are coming in that are going to cover the cost of that event, there are plenty of other ways to make money without taking from these kids in these schools. And I know that. And I think that that's what's made it successful for me, is that it's definitely a lead by example. If you're volunteering your time, why aren't we? It's fun type thing.
I can't imagine anybody following your path for you to think that someone's going to jump on board and say, I'm going to do what she's doing and
I know.
we're going to take this. And I mean, holy cow, just the work that has to go into this and all of the different activities. I mean, the cheer, just for an example, I know that sports are expensive, but I
Sure.
don't think there's any more expensive sport than cheer right now.
Yeah.
Listen, some of these dads talk about what cheer cost. I'm just like, are you serious?
Yeah,
So, but it's very competitive. I mean, the girls like it, the parents love it,
it is.
and it just amazes me that we call it cheer, but it's more of an athletic event that these young ladies are getting out there to perform.
It really is.
So is this kind of like the first year you're jumping into cheer?
Yes, and this is our very first year. I joke about this all the time. I'm very familiar with football. I mean, I just feel like I know that like the back of my hand. And then now I am going into the space of the cheer dance event. And although I've had a daughter, I just feel like, wow, it's such a completely different space to be in. But at the same time, I think I felt that way going into baseball, and it was a breeze. The coaches were so easy to work with. The volunteers were so willing. That just makes the events easy. It makes my job actually
Oh
easy.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's wonderful and for me, it's my passion. And that's how I know that if you can volunteer for something for 20 years, as a side gig, you must like it. Okay. And so I think for me, I know that this is what I should be doing. I just know this was my calling.
Well, you hit on it earlier, and I'd like to dive into it a little bit. The whole NIL for high school age kids, high school sports.
Yes.
When I heard you mention that, I'm like, really? NIL for high school kids? What does that really look like? And when we spoke on the phone prior to you getting here, I'm like, well, some people have mixed reviews on the NIL in college sports, on what it's doing to the sport itself. It's like it's not amateur anymore. It's like we're going to mini pro with it.
Sure.
And the thing I want to give you credit on is that I told you that I would like to kind of play the opposition to that, or just have discussion about the opposition. You're like, absolutely. We want people to know what's going on with it.
That's right.
So from an education standpoint, tell us a little bit about what's happening in the high school space
Okay.
in sports with the NIL, and what that looks like, and kind of what your role is in it.
Okay. So June 30th, 2021, NCAA comes in and there's a ruling that says, okay, college athletes can be paid. Now, there were a lot of dynamics at the time. It's still in its infancy, and there are still a lot of dynamics that made this a positive and a negative.
Okay.
The positives of it are definitely that, and this is a belief system, some believe that a college athlete should be paid for what they do. Okay?
And I don't disagree with that.
Correct. Some people agree and disagree. There's another dynamic in that same space that says, okay, they can be paid, but they are paid. Their college is paid for, or this is paid for. And I don't want to dive off into the collegiate world too much because it is extremely complicated, but I will tell you that some of their college tuition is paid for, but not all of it. Some of them are walk-ons. Some of them are at a smaller division school that don't have as many scholarships. So that does get complicated. But I would venture to say that as this has gone through the process, there have been ADs that have supported it, and there have been ADs that haven't supported it. There have been universities through the whole dynamics of it. It's created some, I would say, areas that make it hard to motivate those athletes as well from a coach's standpoint. But I also think that that comes with the territory of knowing and understanding that athletes in today's world that are in college are different than they were 20 years ago.
Right.
So I think that there are many, many factors that factor into NIL, especially into the collegiate world.
And just for the people who don't know what NIL is.
Right. So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness.
Correct.
Meaning that when you were born, you were given a name, and as you've grown, you've created an image, and your likeness comes from how you represent and partner yourself with the things that you do.
Sure.
So now you can get compensated and paid for that.
And from the athlete's point of view that kind of started all of this, they were looking at how much money these universities are making off their name, image, and likeness.
That's correct.
And I would say that the university are making a lot of money off the athletes. And for me, I do think it's appropriate for someone to have compensation. Now, I think we can all debate how much compensation they should have, what kind of limits we put on it. But I think with anything, we can go too far one way or too far the other way. I think there's a balance, and I'm hopeful that they will start kind of narrowing those gates a little bit to find more of a balance so that everybody can still feel like we have amateur athletes that are out there. But we shouldn't have somebody that's playing for a big school that is having to eat ramen noodles every night because they can't afford to get a job because they have so much training. They're trying to maintain their GPA. We shouldn't have people starving or missing meals because
that's right.
So.
And I worked in the college space when this ruling came down, and I worked for a company that sold sponsorships for the university. That company was making money off of the events that happened at that university. Now, with that being said, I agree. I do believe that the athletes should be compensated at a university level. Again, I think narrowing the parameters would definitely help. But at the same time, I think that world is extremely complicated to navigate right now on multiple levels.
So let's jump in onto the high school side of things, which just kind of blew my mind. I never would have thought that it would have trickled down that far with it.
Sure.
I mean, it does make sense. We do have some rather large high schools that they make money off the sport.
Sure. So I think that the thing to know here is that name, image, and likeness, although it is a very new word and almost taboo to say at times, actually is just a new way of saying reputation. So I want to start there. You and I were born during a time that our parents told us, here's your name, make sure that you have a good reputation, who you hang around is who you are, and it's always going to precede you.
Correct.
And you would hear the word reputation a lot. That's how it was used. If you take that word reputation and you translate it to today's world, it's NIL. That's what it is. And so what we decided to do was when this ruling came down, each state had the ability to pass a ruling to allow high school athletes to participate underneath the umbrella of NIL. So not all of our states have passed it yet. The majority have, but Louisiana is one of them that has passed this law that high schoolers can participate, or prep sports, as you want to call it, in the NIL space. So my immediate thought at that time goes to, number one, how can I make the experience for a high school athlete better? Because that is my mission. High school athletics is a passion of mine, and I want to make sure that I can give them the best possible experience as they can. And then number two, directly even with that, I guess I would say, would be education. If it's such a taboo word by the time they get to college,
Right.
how can we educate them for it not to be, and how to appropriately handle NIL at the high school level? So those were the two focal points and what brought us to Prep Connect.
Okay.
Okay, so Prep Connect focuses on the educational side of things. Number one, teaching all of these athletes how to handle their name, image, and likeness, how to appropriately present themselves, reputation on social media, how to get involved in the community and create a great image of themselves and give back to the community. It directly ties into the event of Bayou Jamb, because then we were able to show the athletes, you see this experience that you had with the Bayou Jamb football jamboree, the Bayou Jamb baseball jamboree. Yes. Well, that experience would not have happened without a volunteer. Okay. Volunteering their time, giving their time to you. So we tie those two things together.
Okay.
In the name, image, and likeness space, we can tell them, okay, you are, for instance, I'm going to use the name Patti Thurmon. That's the name. I am a high school volleyball athlete, and I have 500 followers on my social media.
Okay.
But I really enjoy fishing, even as a female. I'm one of those that I love to go fishing. I like to brim fish.
Okay.
Okay.
You ever have too many brim? I'll
Yeah.
take some off your
Okay.
hands.
There you go. Well, if the honey hole is, and I'm using their name, just throwing them out there. We don't even have a partnership with them, but I'm throwing them out there. But if the honey hole, which is a local community, a local business in the community, says, you know what? I would love to bring Patti Thurmon into our organization and have her wear our female gear, our hats. We need to get more females involved with our business and wearing our gear. This would be a great opportunity for her.
Okay.
Number one, what it does is it teaches that athlete how to appropriately present herself on social media, how to tie in her reputation, her brand, her name, image, and likeness with this business. And what it does for them is reach more females that follow that individual. It also gives that athlete the opportunity to understand working. What is compensation? It's no different than I'm going to go and work a part-time job at XYZ. You're responsible. You're teaching the responsibility of going to that job, showing up, doing what you're told that you're going to do. So it is a job that is contracted between this business and this athlete to represent, influence, and present themselves. So there can be educational seminars teaching them how to appropriately do this, and they're learning from that side and continue to do it. And then it benefits all of the businesses that want to reach a completely different market and utilize this group of millennials on social media that they normally don't have access to.
So how do you get, so you start off with education. So kind of trying to educate myself on this and, reading the internet just because you really blew my mind about, because I just never would have thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, it totally makes sense. And I love the approach that you're wrapping this around. It's about your reputation.
It is.
And I will agree with you. This generation that we're talking about, I don't think that they were really taught that like you and I were.
They weren't.
Started smiling when you were talking about it. I can hear my dad right now telling me, son, brought you in this world with one thing, and you're going to leave this world with one thing, and that's your name. And it's
Same.
up to you.
Absolutely.
On,
that's right.
how you use it. And that always sticks to me. So if you spend any time around me, you'll probably hear it once or twice. So I like how you use the term reputation. Now, one of the things I've found online, so I don't know all the acronyms, but Louisiana has a sports organization, and they've hired a company.
They have.
And I mean, I don't know if is that company they talked about using them for their educational resource, but I'm assuming that company also wants to make money on some level with it. But how do you get in front of the kids? So what does that process look like so that you can even start the conversation? And I would think that it's not just the kids, but it's their parents as well.
Absolutely. So, we will be hosting educational seminars. That's the very first thing that we want to do before we go into the space of it being a profitable business. We want to make sure that every athlete and every parent knows that, especially with it being a sister company of Bayou Jamb, our intent is not to make money off of the athletes at all. We feel like this is an opportunity for them to have a flexible working environment and to actually teach them more about social media and their reputation. That is the focus where the athlete is concerned, giving them that experience. So, educational seminars will happen first. We will promote via radio, digital, all of the things, Prep Connect, and have our athletes join our platform so they can enroll for free. BayouJamb.com. There's a Prep Connect link there. They go in and they put their information into this database, who they are, what grade they are in, what hobbies that they have, what is their GPA, the things that they actually do and that they like. Once they do that, we will take our what we call our business clients. We will ask them to do the same thing. And it's a matching platform. So
Gotcha.
now we are able through the database to say, I'm a business that is outdoors, and here are all of the athletes that have hobbies of the outdoors. One of the most important things that we are going to do is to educate the community and everyone that are in those seminars that this is not a popularity contest. That's something that I feel like has changed the game at the collegiate level. But for us, it's important to know and to understand engagement. Social media engagement happens at a much higher rate and percentage when you have followers that are actually between that 1,500 to 5,000 range. Think about it. How can you engage with 500 million people?
Sure.
It's very difficult. But you can engage at that lower rate with each one of them and respond to them. So we want to communicate that. This is not a popularity contest. It's for any athlete that wants to come on board, or really any student that is part of an organization. If you are a cheerleader or if you are in the band, we want you to join. We want to know what your hobbies are because we want to be able to, the database of athletes are going to be the driving force behind that. And for the businesses that are out there, they are spending money on advertising. They're already spending that money.
That's correct.
Why would they not allocate those dollars and help give a platform and a job to these student athletes that are willing to do the work?
Well, you and I keep coming back to reputation. If you've got that ideal student that's out there that meets that gap, that could really be a great match for someone, but they don't have a good online reputation,
Yes.
it's never going. They just killed every opportunity that they can have.
That's right. That's right. And this gives them the ability to teach them this from the very beginning, which is what we said. If we could get to them from the moment that they are going into their freshman year and teach them that everything that you do is extremely important, even into getting your scholarships into college. What you do and how you represent, the very first thing any coach does at the collegiate level is they go online, look at that social media. What do you have posted?
Yeah.
So now this gives us the opportunity to teach them. Not only does it make your brand valid, it gives you that information at the start of the beginning as much as you possibly
So I
can.
could actually see with this that a student athlete that started off as a student athlete, but maybe they decided not to go into sports when they go into college, but they still have influence that's out there. And
Correct.
why would a company not still want to partner with them if they have influence, if their message of what they're trying to get out is being impacted by this person of influence? And, I think we think kind of big world influencers that have all this attraction that's out there. In my business in real estate, it's a relationship business.
That's right.
And the more authentic that you can be, the more people want to
That's
be in
right.
your presence. So I think it's wonderful that you're teaching our youth from the outset that it's about your reputation. It's okay to be authentic, but you don't have to be something that's not going to be beneficial to you down the road.
That's it. And part of this is, you know, why would you not want to allow these student athletes exposure back into the community? For some of them that are, if it's a female and she's playing volleyball, maybe she wants to be a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she definitely wants to volunteer her time as a nurse, as a nurse. So you bring in St. Francis Medical Center and you highlight the fact that she is volunteering her time in your hospital. That, what a great way and a great message to communicate that back to her peers and get more of those students involved in it. Not only that, it teaches her this is a career path that I really do want to go down on. I mean, I think students will find avenues and career paths through experiences that they're going to gain in high school, whereas they wouldn't before, based off of their time and ability to actually go to a job and work. This gives them so much more of a flexibility. I know myself, I had my two children, both were boys. I have three, but the two that were boys both played football. That is a grueling schedule that they keep. I mean, during the summer, they are practicing. They are
Mm-hmm.
up there from 8 to 12. Then after that, all the things that they do, practice after school. This gives them the ability to have a good, strong work ethic, but to also experience a career path in different areas that they might like.
And it's going to help those that want to pursue um, sports on the collegiate level. It's going to have them set up in a way to where it's not, they're not like cast into it. It's like all of this coming up front and potentially could increase their worth to people because they started early in managing their reputation.
That's exactly right. And social media is not going to go anywhere. We
Mm-hmm.
just know that it's not. So if it's not going anywhere, and we know that there are even, there's good things and there's bad things with social media, and you can be anything on social media that you want to
Right.
be, why not use this for good? Why not take the piece of it that you can influence a positive situation on these student athletes and teach them right now in an early age? Why not do that? And there's so many opportunities. I think when people hear the word NIL, they shy away from it, or they immediately think big organizations,
Yeah.
big money. For us, if you have a student athlete that has maybe it's a sibling that has muscular dystrophy, this is a great opportunity for them to say, I want to speak out about that. I want to partner with the local muscular dystrophy foundation and
Sure.
I want to speak out about it. Maybe there's a student athlete that is passionate about um, the food bank. This is a great opportunity. So it's not just large organizations giving these student athletes large money. It is about local businesses, local community organizations partnering with these student athletes to help them find and navigate a way to have a great reputation and to do something for good.
And I'm sure the coaches and administration in the area, if you can take any student and get up their reputation by
Yes.
teaching them, hey, you can get more if you travel this path versus the other path. And the sad state of our society is that we have a lot of single parent households, and
Yeah.
not taking anything away from a single parent, but it's hard being a
It's
parent.
hard. Yeah.
And it's especially hard when you have just one parent in the household or a grandmother or grandfather that's trying to raise a child. So to be able to have someone put a program like this that starts off with education
Hmm.
and that's where your heart is on it, I think you're gonna have an impact on the kids
Well, I
in
appreciate
this
you
area.
saying that.
Um, so in closing, what do you think what do you think is going to be the next big adventure for you?
Oh,
Where do you go
gosh.
from here?
I,
I mean, because you like blew my mind when it goes. I will tell you that you've changed my opinion on it. I was skeptical to talk about it because I can see, anytime you throw money into the equation,
sure.
um, with youth, I mean, even with adults, it muddies the water. It makes life difficult for people. But to hear you say that look, Brian, we're starting off with education.
Hmm.
We're going to try to connect people if they want to be connected. We're going to
That's
educate
right.
parents.
Yeah.
I think it's great. But what's next for you? You just kind of want
Well,
to see this kind of get fleshed out,
yeah.
or
So I do want to respond on that. There are always um, I always look at life. There's positive and negative. I like to focus on the positive. It gets me through my day and it helps me to be a better person. I have to rely on the fact that there are going to be rules and regulations that are going to be put in place through the LHSAA,
Mm-hmm.
just like there were through the NCAA, that are going to help us with the guidelines of the negative things that come. I know that there are coaches and administrators out there. We're going to have the support of some, and we're not going to have the support of all. And that's part of it. You can't please everyone. But I will tell you that our mind and our hearts and the vision is in the right place. And then as far as just paying these athletes or having them go to another school just because they feel like, okay, there's going to be more opportunity here. I will tell you from a marketing standpoint and opportunity standpoint, influencing and value comes from having a strong reputation with your group of people that are around you. Every business that I know, you included, will probably tell you, if I could get 5 solid leads coming into my business, that's worth the money that I spend.
Absolutely.
So 5 million or following the money, that's not what the businesses are looking for, and that's not what we're looking for. And I think through the educational and the series that we want to launch, and then the parameters that are going to also be put in place through the LHSAA, they're going to keep these student athletes from transferring from this school to that school, because what would be the point? I think you're going to have a kid that's from Gina that's going to have just as much opportunity, that is just as willing to do something as one at a 5A school like West Monroe.
But the cool thing that you're doing that I really like is not only you're educating the kids, you're educating the kids and their parents and administration, but you're educating the businesses too.
Yes.
And you're showing them the opportunity that, look, if you invest in this kid's life, I'm investing to show them how reputation matters. But what could be the possibility of your business just by giving a little bit to this kid, invest in their life, and possibilities could be great.
And I feel that the businesses will really enjoy and like this. I mean, how many businesses that will highlight their interns that they have, or they will bring interns in and say, look, they were such a big help. They taught us this, or they were very fluent in social media. So there's so many positives to it. And this platform is a connecting platform. That's what it is. It is a connecting platform to try and get the student athletes connected with the businesses that normally didn't.
Now, have you already launched the platform, or are you just like at the beginning phase of it?
We're at the beginning phase of it. It's out there. I mean, you could definitely go to our Bayou Jamb website. You could log in. You could get signed up today if you wanted to. The official launch of it will probably come, I'm hoping, the first week of July.
Okay.
So
awesome.
we are close. I've been saying we were close, but we are really close now.
Well, I want to make sure that you tag me when you have the official launch.
I will.
We want to do our part to support you. Made me feel so much more comfortable about what's happening with this, because people fear the unknown.
Sure.
We kind of want to make sure our kids are protected, and I think you're doing a great job with that.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I'll tell you what's next. I'm a dreamer. I always had big dreams, and I'll tell you, I hope to one day this to be a national brand. It's funny that you asked that, because just yesterday I was talking about the success of this person and that person. And I think maybe I'm in the middle of it right now and I really can't see. And my husband asked me, he says, what is the end game? Where are we going with this? And that's the vision. Is I hope for it to be national. I hope to be in Mississippi, in Arkansas, and you see Bayou Jamb in those areas and in those venues, and that experience being brought to many, many kids in the same form and fashion. So,
well, I think I have a little news for your husband. A dreamer doesn't have an end. A dreamer has next, right?
I have next, and that's it. It's always been next. It's always been next for me. So.
Well, I mean, sitting here talking with you, I mean, it's very obvious that your heart's in the right place for the kids. You understand that it's about relationships. You care about our community, and we want to do what we can to support you. So let us know when you officially launch. We want to do our part to support. And Patti, thank you so much for coming in and giving us the time to share with our community what it is that you're doing for it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the 318 Experience, the ultimate podcast for discovering the best of what our community has to offer. I'm Brian Bendily, your host and local realtor, with a passion for showcasing the people, attractions, and hidden treasures of Monroe, West Monroe, and beyond.